Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of College Hockey Talk. On today's podcast, I'm joined by a very special guest. I'm joined by defender from the Princeton women's hockey team, Stefanie Wallace. Welcome to the podcast, Stephanie, and how's everything going?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. The weather's starting to get nicer. Spring is upon us. So for the most part, for myself, I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, the weather hasn't been too nice here yet. It's still pretty bipolar. Depends on
Yeah.
the day, but that's okay.
Well, it was here. It was the beginning of the week. It was freezing cold just because of the wind, but now the wind started to die off a little bit, so it's starting to be a little bit more warmer towards the end of the week, which is nice. So hopefully it stays like that. But April in New England can get very tricky. Some days it's snowing and some days it's like 80 degrees. So we'll see how
Yeah.
it goes from here.
Where exactly are you in New England?
I'm in the Boston area, so that's where I go to school. So that's kind of near there, I guess. So.
Yeah.
Well, how's everything going for yourself right now, both on and off the ice? Have you done anything interesting, and have you been reflecting on the season that was?
Yeah, so our season ended around 3 weeks ago. We lost to Yale in semifinals of ECACs, which definitely a tough way to go out because I think we've competed well with Yale throughout the season. But it was a good game. It was good to make it there given like the track record we had this past season. We were coming in 8th into playoffs and beat the number 1 seed to make it into the tournament, which was pretty cool. So I think like when things ended in that last game in the semifinals, of course we were upset, but also like coming in as the underdog, we were proud of what we did. We had 2 weeks off where we just kind of didn't do anything. We were able to go on a little like spring break vacation, have a little break from hockey, which was kind of nice. And now we're back into postseason training again. So we're on the ice like 3 times a week, like we're lifting. Definitely nice to like see the coaches again and be back in that environment, and also just have like a little more time to do schoolwork and not be stressed all the time has definitely been nice as well.
Yeah, obviously it must have been. I guess if there's one positive from that game, Yale made it to the Frozen Four. So you at least
Yeah.
lost to a team that made it to the Frozen Four. So there's got to be
Yeah.
some pride in that.
Yeah. And also Yale just like had a really they definitely deserved everything that they did this season. Like they really had a good season. They had a good year. Their coach was unreal. Yeah.
Now, what is your team up to now regarding off-season training, and what are your off-season plans for this upcoming off-season? Do you have anything interesting, whether it's hockey related or non-hockey related?
For the summer, I'm still looking at some internships. I've had a few interviews. I don't have anything concrete right now, but my plan is to hopefully get a remote internship and then be back home in Vancouver for the summer. So I'm able to train. I have a good like training group of a bunch of like the local girls, a bunch of like Ohio State girls, Duluth. Um, so hopefully do that. And then like my trainer, everyone back home that I've been training with for like 5 years. So I'll be doing that, which will be good. And then I think we end school like end of May. So I still have a bit of time. So right now I'm just really trying to focus in, like do well in school, have some fun this spring.
Yeah, that's all you have to do. What do you like want to work on for your game in the off season?
I think speed is always a big focus. I think that's like following my freshman year and like over my gap year, like my speed was a big thing. I think a lot of like skill work as well, like on the ice probably, and just like, I don't know, defensive, just like D work. I have like a really good skills coach back home that I really like, that I do a lot of like D specific work, like footwork and whatnot. So I'm really excited to get back with him again in the summer.
Now, I want to transition and talk about the beginning of your hockey career and kind of work all the way up to where you are today with Princeton. So, like you said, you're from Vancouver. So, talk about growing up there and how did you start playing hockey?
Yeah. I think I started off, a little backstory. Both my parents were like ski racers growing up. And so I think their plan for my brother and I was always for us to like get into ski racing. Like we have a cabin like up north, and like we would go every weekend and go skiing. And my parents I think my brother was put into hockey and I was playing ringette at a young age. And then I just like would always be at the rink watching my brother play hockey. And then my parents also put me in, and we just both loved it so much. So instead of going up and skiing on the weekends, we were at the rink all weekend and doing that instead. And we just never got bored of it. And we both just kept playing. And I played for the same like boys association all the way up until Bantam. And then in midget, I transitioned to girls hockey. And my brother like kept playing up until probably like Bantam. And then he actually transitioned and plays field hockey and is now in like the men's national field hockey team. He went to Tokyo
That's awesome.
last year for the Olympics, which is really cool. So he's done pretty well for himself.
That's pretty awesome. Your parents must be proud for the accomplishments you've had so far in your athletic careers.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
I'd hope so.
Now, what kind of led you to transition from ringette, I think is what you said, to hockey? I'm not sure what that is. Maybe because I'm American, so I probably don't know.
Yeah, it's not like a super well-known sport in Canada either. It's the sport, like you have a ring and like just like a long stick that doesn't have a blade. And like, I don't know, I can't say I'm like a big fan of the sport or I follow it at all, but I think like my mom played like beer league ringette or something and was like, okay, like I'm gonna put my daughter in this. And then I just preferred hockey, so then I started playing hockey.
Who was your favorite player growing up? Was it someone in the NHL or was it a female player on the national team?
I was thinking about this. I would say like even like my favorite player growing up, I can't really think of like anyone from like my childhood. Whenever like someone asks me who my favorite player is, like I always say Drew Doughty on the LA Kings. I just like I really like his style of play, and I feel like he plays very similarly to like how I think I play. So I feel like that's part of the reason that I like watching him. I think he's like very calm and composed with the puck, and he's more of an offensive D. And yeah, I think he's very fun to watch.
Now,
And female player, I don't really know.
Oh, really? Was like was there like anyone in the Olympics that you like watched growing up, I guess?
Growing up, it was always like Wickenheiser, Cassie Campbell. I remember like as a kid going to like Vancouver Canucks events, and like Cassie Campbell, like it was like skate with Haley Wickenheiser and Cassie Campbell. So like I have like pictures of them from when I was little, but I don't think like when I was young, women's hockey had much of a media presence. So I think that might be a reason that I just never had like a favorite female player. I definitely follow the women's game a lot more closely now. Also, like I have teammates, like I know I've like played against the players that are now on this team, but yeah.
I guess like who's your favorite like women's hockey player today, if you had to pick?
I'm trying to think of.
I'll tell you my answer if you want me to.
Yeah, can I hear your answer?
Stefanie Wallace. I was a huge fan of hers in the Olympics this past year, so I'd say she's probably my favorite women's hockey player now. Obviously, this is a Princeton women's hockey podcast, so it makes sense for me to say that too.
I mean, I could say Claire Thompson and Sarah Fillier. I mean, at the Olympics, those are definitely my two favorites to watch.
Yeah.
But just like the whole like Canadian women's team in general, like the way how they competed at the Olympics, and it was so fun to watch them absolutely dominate and just have so much fun while they were doing it. And like just talking to Sarah, it just sounded like such an amazing experience.
What was it like being their teammates, and how cool was it to see them win the gold medal?
It was so cool watching them. They're both just like, they're such amazing players on the ice. And in my freshman year, they were our two captains. But I think like even more importantly, they're just such good people and like are just like such like impressive individuals. And like I'm just so honored that like I had the chance to be captained by them and like play with Claire Thompson as like my defensive partner. I feel like I definitely learned a lot, and I wish that season hadn't gone cut short. But I still keep in touch with her today, and I'm excited for Sarah, who's coming back next year. She's actually been on campus the last few weeks, just hanging out and seeing everyone, which has been really nice. We all miss her here a lot.
Have you had the chance to see the gold medal?
I have held the gold medal. It's
That's
much
awesome.
heavier than I thought it would be.
I do like the design of the neck, whatever it's called. I think the way they did it this year was pretty cool compared to the last Olympics.
Yeah. No, I mean every Olympics, I think they do something different. They do something kind of cool. I remember when they had like the Vancouver 2010 Olympics, and like they had like very I was like I every Olympics is cool, I guess.
Yeah, that Olympics for in Vancouver has a very tough memory for me as a U.S. hockey fan.
Yeah.
Not for you, obviously, but
Oh, it was a
for
great
us,
Olympics for me.
for us here down south of Canada, it was not the best memory to say the least. But we're proud of the silver medal, and hopefully, in 2026, we'll get a gold medal back. That's the hope, at least.
Hopefully not, but we'll see.
So, but before Princeton, you played for the Oakville Hornets in the PWHL. How did you get the opportunity to go up to Ontario and play in that league and play for that organization?
Um, yeah, so like I said, I grew up playing boys hockey my whole life. And when I started like at midget age, so like my sophomore year of high school, I transitioned to women's hockey because that was kind of the time where recruitment was starting. And when you're playing men's hockey, like you're not getting recruited for women's whatever. So I started playing for a team. It was like a major midget league that was in Vancouver. And women's hockey in British Columbia, which is like the province I'm from, is very diluted because they have three separate leagues. They have like the sports school league, and then they have the major midget league, and then the JWHL, which like expands over North America. And I just felt like the team that I was on, like I loved my coach. It was the Vancouver Comets. Like Mark Taylor was my coach, like amazing coach, like great person. We had a very strong team. We had like Jen Gardner, Jenna Buglioni, Nina Job Smith, who's on Duluth right now. Those other two are on Ohio. Like they just won the national championship. Like we had a very stacked team, and we would win every single game. I think we went like 29-1 in a season, and would just like there was no competition, which is like fun, but I just didn't feel like I was improving, and it felt like it was going to be 2 more years of that. And so I really wanted to kind of expand my horizon and like go other places and get better competition. And that's kind of what led me to look into. Sorry, can you hear that?
I can, yes. It's not a big
Oh,
deal.
I'm sorry. Let me I'm gonna do not disturb this conversation.
I understand you're a busy person, so it's all good.
They're not important messages. It's just a group chat. Anyways, yeah, so I wanted to go somewhere else, and I had heard really good things about the PWHL. I knew a lot of names within the PWHL, so I reached out, spoke with Oakville, and they offered me a spot there. And then I found the Hardys, a great billet family who took me in. And yeah, it was all a very spur of the moment decision. In the moment, I wasn't sure if I was making the right decision, but looking back on it now, I'm happy that I went.
Yeah, how did you find out about the league? I'm curious. Did you know anything about it, or did you just like do research and find that was like the best spot for you to develop?
Honestly, I don't even know how I found out about the league. Oh, I'm so sorry. Um, I think it might have been like my family is from back east.
Hmm.
My mom like grew up in like Ontario, and I think she knew some like family friends whose like kids played in the PWHL, and I think that's kind of where it started. And then from there, I just found Oakville. At the time, Oakville, it was like Oakville and Arrows were like the two top teams, so like those are definitely like the places that I wanted to go, and yeah, ended up in Oakville.
Talk about your experience with Oakville. What was like the best memory you had there, and how did it help prepare you for college hockey with Princeton?
Hmm. I feel like most of the memories I have from Oakville, like my favorite memories, are probably not even like on ice memories, just like great team dynamics and having fun, like going on the road and staying in hotels. And I feel like that's something like at the time that you really take for granted. And then like once you get older and you're in college and like you're kind of getting to the end of your hockey career, like you think about all those like fun road trips you took, like the team bus and hanging out in the hotel, like going in the hotel pool, like just like messing around. Um, which like we do, like we travel a lot now, but things are a lot more different. Like you don't have as much time to just like have fun and like be a kid. So I feel like that was definitely fun. And I also got to play against some world-class hockey players, like playing with Sarah Fillier back then. And like, I still have the privilege of playing with her and her sister. Um, who else was on that team? Like Emily Rickwood on UNH, Jada Christian, Maddie MacArthur, the BC goalie, Isabel Hardy, Lexia Gia, Quinnipiac. And then not even to name like all the other players that I was able to play against in that league who have now gone on to like do such great things. So yeah.
That's awesome. I heard there was karaoke on the bus for some long road trips. Am I correct in that assumption? Because one of your teammates told me that.
Which teammate told you that?
Emily Oosterveld.
Oh yeah, Ooster. Yeah, there's always karaoke. There's always someone singing.
Did you ever get to sing at all, or were you the one just try to hide from it?
No, I do a good karaoke. I do like a good karaoke.
That's awesome. What's like your go-to song?
I do a lot of Shania Twain. If I can do a duet, I'll do "Party for Two," Shania Twain and
That's good.
Billy Harrington. Um, what was the one I did? I did one this year. I did Tennessee Whiskey, like Chris Stapleton, I believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I Want It That Way, Backstreet Boys. I actually do a lot of karaoke for some odd reason. I'm not a good singer at all. I think it's very fun.
Yeah. Who's like your karaoke partner? Was it like Sarah Fillier, since you both did it with Oakville and Princeton?
Oh no, I have not had the privilege of karaokeing with Sarah Fillier. Maybe one day. Usually
No.
people don't want to duet with me, which is terrible, but that's okay.
Well, you said that there was like a one Shania Twain song that you had to duet with. I'm curious, like if any of your teammates had to join in with you, or did you just sing like both parts?
um I've definitely done that in karaoke, but I don't think I've done that with like my team. I think that was at some other event.
So goal for next year is you have to get
Get
a
it?
duet with someone on your team, like in
Yeah.
karaoke at some time.
Yes,
Because
I will.
I'd love to see that.
I'll keep you updated on that for sure.
It's got to be a freshman though, just because like they'll feel like they have to do it with you. So that's who I'm assuming it's going to be. So now talk as you're talking about like how you're playing against some of those best players in the PWHL. Like, what was your recruitment process like with Princeton? How did they find you compared to those other players that they were looking at? And what made you want to go to an Ivy League school and play for Princeton versus the other schools you might have looked at?
Um, yeah, I feel like I always knew that I wanted to go to an Ivy League school. I think it's just like such an amazing opportunity to like be able to go to one of like the best schools in the world, in the country, and play a sport there, and like being a student athlete at one of those schools. So I think like throughout my recruitment process, I definitely like looked at some other like non-Ivy schools, but ultimately I knew like where I wanted to end up. I also think like Princeton, at the time that I was getting recruited, they had a very strong recruitment class coming in. So I was like looking at that really closely. Like I knew both the Filliers were going there. They had like Brooke McQuigg at one point was committed. Like they had a really solid lineup. So it just to me seemed like that was the best move, and going to Princeton would give me the best balance between hockey and academics, and like school like is super important to me, and I wanted to go to a really good school. In terms of recruitment, I think I started talking to Princeton. It was like the first Stony Creek tournament. If you're familiar with that tournament, it's like a very big like college showcase tournament that happens in like September of every year in Ontario. And it was like my first time ever going. It was the first year I played girls hockey. And my coach always loves to tell me my recruitment story of how she was just like walking past our like ice sheet, like walking past the game, and she just stopped to watch for a little bit and like saw me, and I guess like liked what she saw and texted my coach on the spot. And then it was kind of history from there. Like as soon as I heard from Princeton, I was like, this is where I want to go. And then I toured, and that really solidified it because the campus is the most beautiful campus I've ever been on.
What's how do you balance being a student athlete at an Ivy League school? Because you obviously have a heavy academic workload, but obviously being a student athlete at any university is a lot on its own. So how do you balance both those aspects of your life?
Yeah. I think definitely like coming in my freshman year, I think this happens to every single freshman student athlete, any like freshman in general. You really struggle to find a balance between schoolwork and like your mental health and athletics. And I definitely struggled with that. And I felt like I wasn't sleeping at all. Like I felt like I didn't have time to do anything. Was constantly stressed out, just like not having fun. I think like the main thing that like has made things a lot better like this year is that I've learned to manage my time better. Like time management is the most important thing, and also just like putting yourself first and like making sure you're sleeping, you're fueling yourself properly, you're hydrating, prioritizing your mental health, which is something that I think everyone struggles with at some point. But yeah, it definitely is a lot of work, but it's also very rewarding to get to say, like, I'm very proud to say that I am a student athlete at Princeton and I work very hard for everything that I have.
And what was the biggest adjustment you had to make in college hockey? Was it on the ice thing, like speed of the game, decision making, especially as a defender, or was it the off the ice stuff you're talking about, trying to learn how to balance your life and that mental aspect of things that you were talking about before?
Um, I think both were definitely factors, and that made like my freshman year hard. I think like for everyone kind of coming into college hockey, like you come in from your home team and you were like a captain on your home team, you like got a lot of ice time, you were used to kind of being like that go-to player that your coach looked to, and then you come into college hockey and you're a freshman, and that's just not the case. Like you're bottom of the barrel, like you need to work for everything you have. um so I think like that was a bit of a reality check for me coming in. And I definitely, the speed of the game, that was like the main thing that I noticed, is that like people were just so fast, like everyone was so fit, um, that I had to really adjust to it. And I think I mentioned this already, but over my year off, like the main thing I focused on was just like my speed and working on like off ice stuff, because I felt like that was like the main thing that I was missing in my game. And like in order to play at that top level and like excel, that's what I needed to work on. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it definitely did. It's definitely interesting to hear because obviously I'm not smart enough to ever even be considered for an Ivy League school. So it's interesting for me to hear what it's like and just how different it is versus other universities and what it's like being a student athlete because, I think I know everything, but then when you hear your perspective is just so much different. So especially as a women's hockey player, because academics is so huge because I feel like at least as a men's hockey player, you might have a chance to go pro and leave a year
Yeah.
early in Ivy League school. But for a women's hockey player, that's really not the reality because that education is so vital once you graduate. So that's something that I find interesting as well.
Yeah, no, and definitely that was like a big factor, especially like when I was first getting recruited. Like I think there's been a lot of big steps forward in like women's professional hockey and like being able to make a career out of it. I don't think like we're exactly there yet, but at some point in the future, hopefully. But yeah, that was my exact thinking, is that I'm not going to be playing hockey my whole life. Like I'm going to have to get a job. I'm going to have to find a way of living on my own, and why not like get a great education and like set myself up to succeed in life after hockey.
Yeah.
So
Now talk about the coaching staff at Princeton. What have they taught you about the game that you didn't know before? And talk about Coach Maury. I'm just going to say she's my favorite coach in college hockey. Not
really,
because she joined the podcast, but she just seems like a great motivator just from watching her on the bench.
yeah, no, she's definitely she has some pretty good pregame speeches. Definitely gets us fired up. Yeah, no, I don't have any complaints about our coaching staff. I really like Kara as a head coach. And then I think like Courtney Kessel, who's our like assistant defenseman coach, and Shelly Picard, our forward coach. Both of our assistant coaches have so much like international experience. Shelly was a member of the Sochi team, I believe, one of the past Olympics, and then Courtney played with the national team for years. And I think like definitely there's like differences in their coaching style versus Kara's, but I think they complement each other and it works well to create a good system. I think from Kara, one of the like main things that I've learned from her is just like how to be an adaptable player. And we talk a lot about our team, or we talk a lot on our team about like everyone having a role and like contributing to the team via your role. And doesn't matter what your role is, like everything is equally important, whether you're like a motivator on the bench, whether you're on the power play, on the PK, you know what I mean? So I feel like that was like just like team dynamic, like thinking for the team, not thinking for the individual. As a D coach, like I love Courtney. I really love the comments she makes, and I feel like I've definitely improved my game a lot by just like listening to her. She's very blunt, and she'll tell you things as they are, which is I like that. I think that's a good thing. I don't really like when coaches sugarcoat things. So yeah.
Now, talk about your first year with Princeton and just the season that was, because it was a very kind of crazy season for your team. You won the ECAC championship, beating the number one team in the country in Cornell. But then you were supposed to play Northeastern in the tournament, and then everything got shut down. So just talk about that season from a hockey standpoint, what you took away from it, and what was it like winning the ECAC championship, and how heartbroken were you when you found out the season was canceled and your seniors would not have another chance to play college hockey again?
Um, that was so long ago. I'm trying to. When I was reading through these questions, I was like, I don't even remember like anything about that season. It seems like it was an eternity ago. I remember like when I first came in, I think at the beginning of the season, we definitely had like our goals. Like they had just come off a very strong like Sarah Fillier, like that whole class, they had just had a very strong freshman season. The team had done well. They had made it to the NCAA tournament. So coming in as freshmen, there were a lot of expectations for like how this season was going to go. And I remember at the beginning of the season, we had like laid out all these goals and all these things we wanted to achieve. And like at the time thinking about all these things, I was like, I'm just a freshman. Like this is absurd. Like we're going to make it to like the national championship. Like that's our goal for the year. That's crazy. And definitely like the way things were going at the beginning of the year, I think it took us a while to like hit our stride. I've noticed with our program, we're definitely more of a playoff team. We tend to really like hit our stride in playoffs, but we finally like clicked close to the end of our season when we beat Clarkson in that semifinal game to move on to the finals against Cornell. We were all just in such a good headspace, and like I think like one of the main things I love about Princeton and I love about the culture of our team is that we just have fun and like we just try to make things fun all the time. And I just remember like that's like the main thing I remember from that game against Cornell is that like we were kind of coming in, we were the underdogs. We were just like, let's just go have fun. Let's just see how this game goes. There was no doubt in my mind. Like I never remember thinking like we're not going to win this game. I'm pretty sure Cornell scored like 2 goals in the first like period or like I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure they got up very early on in the game and still like our attitude never shifted. We were never negative. We knew we had it and we ended up winning in the end, which is great. And then we were like on cloud 9, things were great. And then we get back to campus on the Monday and then we hear that like COVID-19 is spreading the globe and we don't know what the next few days are going to look like. Like we're trying to figure out what's happening. And then slowly but surely we start hearing that like all these other like sports on campus, like their seasons are being canceled, their games are being postponed. We're being told that we're going to have to go home for an indefinite amount of time. At this time, we're still being told that like we're going to be playing on the weekend and we're going to be traveling to Boston. So I think it was like the Friday. Like we had won ECACs on like the Saturday or the Sunday, and the following Friday we were getting ready to go to Northeastern, packed, like all our bags were at the rink. We were getting on the bus. And as soon as we were getting on the bus, the NCAA tweeted that they were canceling all championships and canceling all sports for the rest of the year. So that was a really upsetting time, definitely for our seniors, who I still feel bad to this day. Like, I don't wish that upon anyone. Those players, like, did so much for this program, and they really deserve to be able to leave it all out there, and they never got that opportunity. But yeah, and then after that we got sent home, and everything just happened so fast, and I never expected things to pan out the way they did with COVID over that year, or like we're moving into like over 2 years now of this.
Yeah, I think like 2 years to the day, right?
Yeah, no, it was like this time I'm getting all my like memories on my phone of like 2 years ago today of like being in isolation. But yeah, it's crazy. I think it definitely was a reality check for a lot of people, and like makes you realize how quickly things can be taken away from you,
Oh
and how
yeah.
you can't take anything for granted.
Yeah, that was like the biggest thing I learned throughout COVID was just that lesson. And, it's like even today, like I'm still worried like that things could like be taken away from me again. So it's trying to cope with the fact like to just take every day as it is and not worry about the future. But it's hard for me to do that. So
Yeah, no, it definitely is, but yeah, I'm just hoping things are gonna
yeah, I agree.
like things are slowly going back to normal. Like at least on campus here, we our mask mandate just got lifted. We're not testing as frequently anymore, which is nice. That was a big issue during our season. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, no, I hope for the same thing, but I think we'll find out this upcoming winter whether that's COVID. I bet you another variant will show up in the winter time just because people are inside, things are spreading more easily. So that's when I think will be the big test to see if like normalcy will return. So I guess we'll have to wait and see when that happens. Hopefully I'm wrong about that. But now, talk about what you did when the Ivy League announced that the season after the season when it got canceled, your I guess supposed to be your sophomore year got canceled. What'd you do during that time period when you would normally have a season? And was it hard watching other college hockey teams play when your team didn't have the chance to, I guess, play in that season?
yeah. So I like being in Canada. Things were very shut down, much more shut down than most of the United States, I would say. Um, so I didn't really like. It was really hard to find work and find things to do. A lot of the internship, like I had an internship that was based out of the United States, and because I was stationed in Canada, they wouldn't allow me to do it. So I hit a lot of like road bumps over my gap year, which was kind of difficult. It was also just hard to find ice and gyms, like nothing was open. So I probably didn't skate, like actually like practice for over 6 months, which was probably the longest time I've ever gone without like going on the ice and doing anything. Which like looking back on it now, I think it like was very beneficial to take that time away. Just like I like was just off ice training, and I feel like that was like very beneficial, but also just like it made me realize how much I love hockey and how much I need it in my life. So that was kind of cool to have that. But over my gap year, I was living in Vancouver. I worked for my local health authority as a COVID screener. So I was like working at the hospital, doing that every day, which was like a very cool experience to be a part of that and like be like in sorts on the front line and just seeing like how the health system like struggled throughout the pandemic and everything, all the hardships that like they had to go through and like all the measures that they were taking to ensure like the safety of the community was very eye-opening and like definitely a super cool experience. And then I also coached over my year off. I spent a lot of time skiing over my year off, which was really fun. I got to do a lot of things that like I don't usually get to do. I once things started to open up a bit, I was able to travel and like visit friends across Canada. I didn't leave the country over my year off at all. But yeah, it was nice.
And getting back to Princeton, how did you like build up the chemistry with the new players since over half your team is first year players?
Yeah, I I knew one of the freshmen coming in, Sarah Paul, who like I was very good friends with. We like played on like Team BC together. We went through like that whole like provincial team program together, so I knew her. I think it was definitely like a big shock for everyone coming back to campus and like being around people again. We always would joke that like we just like didn't remember how to socialize, like we hadn't really socialized in 2 years. But I think we have a really good team dynamic, and I think it took a while for everyone to adjust to the team, and I think a lot of that was just because of like the pandemic and not being around people and whatnot. But no, it's been super fun, and like it's kind of hard in season because like all the time that you're hanging out, it's like forced hanging out where you have practice or you have like lift or team meetings. But now we're getting to actually like do a lot of things outside of hockey and like getting to know, like I feel like I'm like really getting to know my teammates better over the off season when we're just like hanging out and like having fun, which is good as well.
Now, talk about this past season. Obviously, it was kind of an up and down year for your team, but your team ended up making the playoffs, and then you pulled off that great upset against the number one seed in the ECAC in Harvard. So just talk about this past season and specifically talk about that upset and what it meant for your team. And then how would you, I guess, reflect on this past season, look back on it now?
Yeah, I think that game against Harvard, like us coming in as the number 8 seed, beating the number 1, I think it's definitely like a great underdog story. And I always love like being the underdog in a game because you can go in and have nothing to lose and just work hard and see what happens. But I do also think that it is a testament to how competitive our league is. And that was like something that we saw throughout the entire year, is that any team on any given day could beat anyone, which is like one of the reasons that I'm really happy that I'm in the ECAC and I get to compete in this league, because I feel like every single game, like you never know what's going to happen. Like every team is good, like very good competition. I think like for our team this year, I think COVID had a pretty big impact on our team. The way like the Ivies operate, the way Princeton operates with asymptomatic testing is that they test asymptomatically. We would have to test 3 times a week, whereas a lot of other schools in our conference didn't have those same restrictions. So we had a lot of players out because of COVID testing issues. We had a lot of injuries this year, a lot of concussions. Just felt like we never had a full roster, which made it difficult because I don't know. I don't think we were really able to show our like full potential as a team this year. But I think by the end of the season, we had kind of hit it, like we were starting to figure it out at least. And then it was short-lived, but that's okay. But I think I think it was a fun year. I would definitely say this was more of a rebuilding year for us, and now our focus really is on next season and what we're going to do next season. So I think we're all excited to get that.
I think it should be good next season, just because, like, you know, you have that upset, so you know what it takes to win a playoff series, which some teams might not have.
Yeah.
Which I think is important, especially some of those Ivy League teams where they never had, either one didn't play in the playoffs or two didn't win their series. So I think that's like a big thing heading into next year for your team, that you have that experience to win a series, because it's not easy.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, last question before we get to the non-hockey segment is, like, how would you evaluate your college hockey experience with Princeton so far?
Like in terms of this season, or just like generally?
Just overall big picture, I guess.
I mean, I don't really know what I was expecting going into college hockey. I'm very happy. Like, I love it. I think it's super fun. I think a lot of people, when they go into college athletics, they kind of talk about this burnout of like, they've been playing this sport their whole life, and like it's always been like super fun to play, and then you get into college and the fun's kind of taken out of it. And I mentioned this earlier, but like our team culture like prides itself on having fun and like smiling and giggling, and like our team warm-ups are us just like jumping around and dancing, and like our team meetings are always fun, and like we're all joking around. Our coaches, like they're our coaches and we respect them, but like more than anything they're our friends. So I feel like to me, like hockey at Princeton is just as fun as it was growing up, maybe even more. So I really enjoy it. I have no complaints other than it just being a lot of work sometimes with school.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like can't think of any other school that I would want to be at other than Princeton.
So we're now in a segment I like to call the non-hockey segment, where I ask you some non-hockey questions just to get to know you a little bit more off the ice. First one is, what's your favorite class at Princeton?
Oh, so I just declared economics as my major. So I do enjoy like all the econ classes that I take. And I'm also thinking about minoring in French. So I've taken a lot of like very interesting French classes. I'm in like a 19th century French novel course right now, which like I would have never taken a class like that had I not like come here. So I'm really enjoying that right now, and I like find it very challenging, but I'm reading all these books that like are like landmark novels that I would have never read prior. So it's kind of fun. And like I love all the classes I take here.
Yeah.
I like not complain about a single one. Well, I mean, there's a few I could complain about, but I'm not going to right now.
Yeah, math. I never like math. I don't
Yeah.
care. So that's I don't care. Like if you want to complain about that class, I completely understand.
Yeah, I came in engineering in my freshman year. That's like what my major was, and I quickly switched out of that. But I was in like physics and math, and just terrible. Could not do it.
Yeah. I think I don't know. Do you know how to speak French at all, or is it just like you know how to read it?
I'm my dad is from Montreal, and I grew up speaking French. I went to like a French elementary school, so like I'm pretty much bilingual. So yeah.
Can you say something in French if you can?
What do you want me to say?
I have no clue. Like you should something about like hockey, I guess.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Stefanie. Je joue pour l'équipe de Princeton I don't know.
Awesome.
On the spot.
How do you say college hockey in French?
Équipe féminin de hockey à l'université. I don't know.
I don't know how to speak any language. That's pretty awesome. And I'm taking a language class this semester. It's been definitely very tough. You know, when you only speak one language throughout your whole life and try to have to learn another one, it's not easy. So I'm doing my best. It's not French, so that's why I was just interested to see how it's like. But I think the only thing I know how to say in Spanish so far is "Hola, mi llamo Mateo, ¿cómo estás?" Something like that. So I'm learning. I'm doing my best with that.
That's all you kind of need.
So, speaking of your teammates, which teammate is the funniest at Princeton? Since you said your team likes to laugh a lot.
The funniest person on my team. We have a lot of really good characters. I would say Sarah Paul, who's like one of my freshmen, my like friend from BC. That girl makes me laugh so hard. And we have like very similar senses of humor. So we have a good chuckle. I just saw her at lunch right now. I always need to see her at some point during the day. If I'm like having a bad day, I just need to like have like a 10-minute sit down with her just to laugh. So yeah.
Yeah, you obviously have the best style on the team. We see the pregame outfit photos that Princeton posts. But besides yourself, who has the best style on the team?
I'd say when I was reading this question, I didn't know if you meant like on ice style or.
Oh, I mean off ice, like the pregame outfits. Because like I said, I see what you pull up with. Like you have the best style on the team, at least in my opinion.
Oh, I don't know about that, but thank you. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking I picked the same person for on ice and off ice, and I would say Mariah Keppel.
Mm-hmm.
She always shows up, and she's usually like the main person in our like pregame pictures. Like she really pulls out all the stops for her outfits. I really commend her. I wish I could put that amount of detail into my outfit, but I'm just very lazy. And then her on ice style too, I would say is pretty good.
I always like the goalies on ice style just because I think it's a kind of a unique like thing you have to like pull off. Like I like the pads and all that stuff. That's
Yeah.
just my opinion.
Have you seen our goalies pads?
Oh yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah.
With the orange and the tiger, I think that's pretty sick.
Yeah. Cassie Reales are really cool, and Rachel's. Yeah.
Now, last non-hockey question is: if you could have lunch with anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
Oh, I was thinking about this one. I don't like questions like this because I never know what to say.
I'm sorry
Um,
about that.
that's okay. I was thinking one of my favorite authors is Malcolm Gladwell, and he writes a lot of like books. He's written a lot of like New York Times bestsellers, but it's all like social science research and like how that like pertains to like our everyday lives. So he's written like Blank, The Tipping Point, What the Dog Saw. And I would just like really like to pick his brain because I've read like all of his books and I find him very interesting.
Now, back to some hockey questions. First one is: what advice would you give younger players trying to make Division One college hockey?
I would say that this is like advice that I remember I was told at like some like U16 camp that I was at, and it like really resonated with me, is that you're never too old, or like you're never good enough. Like there's always something you can work on. Like you're never done developing. And I think a lot of like kids, like they reach a certain age and they're like, oh, like I'm skilled, like I'm good in the league that I'm in. I don't need to do more, but like you can always work on something. There's always something that you can fine tune in your game, whether it be like on the ice or off the ice, like always be pushing to get better. I think like another thing that's so important is like being coachable. And I think like being able to take criticism and understand when you're doing something wrong and not being like hard-headed about things is super important as well. And I think like also just being a good person, like on top of everything. Like coaches like don't want to recruit terrible people. Like be a good person, like care about your teammates. Yeah.
Well, the last question before the interview ends is just: do you have any shout outs you want to give to any of your family members, teammates, or friends? I know you mentioned a few people throughout the interview, but if there's someone you want to shout out, feel free to do that.
Um, I guess I'll shout out the Princeton girls. Love you all. Shout out to my mom. Love my mom. Yeah, I guess that's it. I don't know.
Thank you so much, Stefanie, though, for coming on the podcast. I had the pleasure of talking with you today. It really means a lot to myself. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day and coming on. It really means a lot to myself. And I wish you nothing but the best for the off season and for next year. I know you're going to do great, and hopefully you get the chance to see your team play in person. I think that'll be a lot of fun. So one of my favorite players on the team, and thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I had fun.